In the spring of 1984, a fire at the haunted castle in Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey resulted in the deaths of 8 teenagers and injuries to at least 7 others. This tragedy is considered one of the worst theme park disasters in history. Six Flags Great Adventure is a 1,700-acre theme park located in Jackson, New Jersey. The haunted castle was originally created by George Mahana, owner of the now-defunct Toms River Haunted House Company, in 1978. Great Adventure leased the castle in 1979 as a temporary attraction for October, unlike the park's current horror attractions. The haunted castle was not initially designed to be a permanent fixture, and it was supposed to be returned to Mahana at the end of the season. However, its rapid popularity and positive customer feedback convinced the management to sign a longer lease. The new lease brought about a renovation. Mahana's company replicated the castle, doubling its size to accommodate more visitors, and it was permanently added to the park's list of attractions. Since 1982, it had generated $13 million in revenue, making Great Adventure the 4th most visited amusement park in the United States, after Disney World, Disneyland, and Knott's Berry Farm. Great Adventure quickly became the crown jewel of the Six Flags chain. It was the highest-grossing park outside of Florida and California. However, the haunted castle in the theme park was essentially a narrow, dimly lit maze of aluminum trailers, filled with employees in bizarre costumes who jumped out from dark corners to scare visitors, surrounded by coffins, hanging cobwebs, and giant skeletons. These rooms were actually separate trailers connected by a central control room. One visitor said, "You didn't know where you were. It was very disorienting. Sometimes it was completely dark." Inside the castle, there were no sprinklers or smoke alarms, and only 3 exits. As one former employee described, Great Adventure Management never gave much thought to the castle. It was buried in the back of the park, and despite being there for 5 years, the haunted castle was still considered a temporary structure, so it wasn't fitted with sprinklers or other fire and safety measures that were already required by regulations at the time. Thus, one of the worst disasters in theme park history was about to unfold. The incident occurred on May 11, 1984, a warm spring day. Due to the park's popularity and the favorable weather, there were many visitors, including a large number of students. At 6:40 p.m., Casey Cipriani had just returned home from her job as Assistant Public Relations Director at Six Flags Great Adventure. The phone rang, and it was the senior security officer on duty at the park. She was glad he called. Casey had only started working at Great Adventure a few months earlier, and she was working hard to ensure employees followed the proper chain of command. He was calling to report a small fire at the haunted castle attraction. It was no big deal. He just wanted her to know. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. This time it was another park security officer. His question would haunt Casey for the rest of her life. "The haunted castle is on fire. Where can the ABC News helicopter land?" According to official fire records from Jackson Township, a lighter inadvertently ignited the haunted castle. Flames driven by the wind shot into the night sky, and temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees melted the metal walls, turning the interior into an inferno. 8 teenagers perished, most of them students on field trips from various schools in the New York/New Jersey metropolitan area. The victims included 7 young men and 1 young woman, all burned beyond recognition. Their identities were confirmed partly through rings, jewelry, car keys, and other items found on the bodies, and partly through the names of missing children provided by their families. Among the victims identified by officials were Nicola Chiazza, 18, and Joseph Berruti, 17, both of Paterson, New Jersey, and Tina Genovese, 15, of Williamstown, New Jersey. 4 others were students at Franklin K. Lane High School in Brooklyn: Eric Rodriguez, 18, Samuel Valentin, 17, and Lenny Ruiz, 17, all of Brooklyn, and Jose Carrion, 17, of Queens. The 8th victim was Christopher Harrison, 17, of Queens, a Franklin K. Lane graduate who had joined his former schoolmates for an outing. After the fire was extinguished, The bodies were so badly burned that they were initially mistaken for mannequins. County Medical Examiner Dr. Walter Corrigan stated that all 8 victims died of asphyxiation. Preliminary tests indicated they succumbed to carbon monoxide poisoning. In the aftermath of such a catastrophic disaster, one question loomed in everyone's minds. How could such a devastating accident happen at one of the most popular theme parks? Who or what entities were responsible? But surprisingly, in the days following the disaster, no one seemed able to provide answers. Lack of fire safety measures. The haunted castle had only one fire extinguisher for customer use. No sprinklers, fire alarms, smoke detectors, windows, or employee communication system. It was a narrow, dimly lit maze of aluminum trailers with only 3 exits. Complex interior design. Ocean County Assistant Prosecutor Kevin W. Kelly stated that the attraction staff were responsible for overseeing a maze-like path equivalent to 1.5 football fields in length. During the fire, there were not enough staff to provide timely and effective rescue. Non-compliant materials. The materials used inside the haunted castle did not meet state standards. The materials caught fire too quickly, causing the blaze to spread rapidly. Violation of state electrical codes. The haunted castle violated multiple state electrical codes and did not have the occupancy permit required by state law. Ultimately, the disaster resulted from a complex series of local, state, and federal laws that failed to provide effective oversight. The New Jersey Department of Labor and Industry was responsible for inspecting the safety of rides like roller coasters and Ferris wheels, while municipal authorities enforced state and local building codes, overseeing fire safety and wiring. Finally, the Federal Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, monitored employee safety. However, the regulatory system failed at almost every level. Under the state's Uniform Construction Code, the owner was required to install smoke detectors and other common safety devices before opening the castle. As mentioned earlier, the haunted castle was considered a temporary structure. The town's building inspector stated that the code did not apply to temporary buildings, so the requirement for smoke detectors was not enforced. During the subsequent criminal trial, Jackson Township's fire inspector testified that he had never inspected the castle. Despite being in the park for 5 years, the trailers were still on wheels, so the town considered it a temporary structure. On May 29, 1985, the case went to trial in the New Jersey Superior Court in Toms River. The prosecution called fire consultants as witnesses who had inspected the castle and recommended installing sprinklers or smoke alarms. However, these devices were not in place when the attraction burned down. Testifying shift managers stated, "None of the exit lights were working, other lights were missing bulbs, and there were no fire alarms, despite visitors previously lighting matches and lighters in the dark hallways." They further testified that management rejected their requests for safety precautions due to high costs. They also confirmed that a broken bumper pad in the hallway exposed foam rubber padding. After 8 weeks of trial and 13 hours of deliberation, the jury found the 2 companies not guilty. 2 park managers charged with manslaughter avoided trial and potential imprisonment by participating in a pretrial intervention program that allowed them to perform community service. The families of 4 victims filed civil lawsuits against Six Flags owner Bally Manufacturing, Six Flags Great Adventure, and the Haunted Castle's builder, George Mahana of Toms River Haunted House Company, alleging gross negligence and wrongful death. The New York City Board of Education, the state of New Jersey, Ocean County, and Jackson Township were also part of the lawsuit. 7 of the 8 families later settled out of court for $2.5 million each. The 8th family chose to go to trial and was awarded $750,000 in damages. Following the fire, other haunted attractions in New Jersey were immediately closed pending fire inspections, including the multi-trailer Gates of Hell at the West Coast Casino Pier in New Jersey, also built by Toms River Haunted House Company. New Jersey and other states passed new fire safety laws. Great Adventure went from being the 4th most visited park in the nation to nearly closing in 1987. Subsequently, a series of fatal accidents, riots, and other bizarre incidents occurred. Many, including company insiders, believed the park was cursed. Even those who thought the park could shake off the bad luck began to believe it could never regain its reputation. Only with massive management reforms and significant investments in external public relations and marketing consultation did Six Flags decide to keep the park open. In the late 1980s, substantial funds and company leadership finally turned the park around. In 1987, the park changed its logo, banned alcohol, and stopped hosting hard rock concerts, tripling its security personnel. However, looking back at its tragic history, it is essential not only to remember the safety lessons learned from the haunted castle fire, but also to understand how to make the entire regulatory system work effectively. For the families of the 8 children who perished and the scarred survivors, the haunted castle fire is undoubtedly unforgettable.